All right, guys, welcome back to the Laydown podcast. I'm your host, Ultra, of course, joined by my co-host, Lenny B. And yes, guys, we were right. That's why we're wearing sunglasses. The Golden State Warriors are once again, for the fourth time in 8 years, NBA champions.
Yes.
Lenny called it from before the playoffs would begin. I told y'all before the series the Warriors would win in six, and they did win in six.
Not winning seven though.
We both picked them to win, but that's the important part. We both picked
That
Steph
that is the
Curry to win
important part.
Finals MVP, and he won Finals MVP finally. So we've got a packed show. We're going to talk a lot of Warriors, a lot of different Warriors topics, a little bit Celtics, and then a little bit just general NBA. So stay tuned, and we'll start with before we get into the kind of a larger extrapolation of the Warriors. Let's just start with Game 6 and just kind of the series and how it shifted in general. So the Warriors won Game 6, 103-90, and Lenny, I'm just gonna go straight to you because you're the hardcore Dubs fan here. Take me through kind of your emotions of this game and why you think the series shifted in the final three games.
For game six, I have a funny story for this. This is so stupid. This is the stupidest thing ever, but it's totally on brand for me. We had a joke in my family every time we watched the Warriors, this series, that if Draymond hit an open three, that would be the game that we won the series with. And he hadn't hit an open three the entire playoffs. And then he hits one on game six, and they go on a 21-0 run. I swear to God, that was when they went on the 21-0 run. When he literally hit that shot, it was the funniest thing ever. I don't. As soon as he hit that shot, I knew we were gonna win the game. It's so stupid, but it's so me. Anyway, but like actually, if we're talking about how they actually won the game, the Warriors finally figured out how to get offense out of players outside of Steph Curry. Yeah, they were just. It felt like everyone was at least solid for the most part on offense. Like Draymond, for not as many points as he scored in this game or in the series, he was setting up crucial blocks. He was had some good passes. His rebounds were great. That's expected about as much as I expected him from. He's a role player at this point, and we know that. But Kevin Looney, when he got on the floor, rebounds obviously. Klay, he picked it up for the last couple of games of the series. Since about game 4, I think he's been pretty good. Don't think he's great. I don't think he's taken over a game, but I think he's been pretty good. Curry's been Curry, obviously. Wiggins has been great over the last 3 games. I know he didn't show up points wise or just generally like that as he did in game 5, but I think overall he had really good series. I thought he had a really good series. I think one of the major parts people aren't talking about is Gary Payton's influence. He increased in minutes throughout the entire series, and you could tell that the perimeter defense just got a way better whenever he got on the court, and that was our biggest problem going into it. We couldn't figure out how to guard the perimeter because we got like Larry White, or is it
Derek
Larry
White.
White? Derek White. Sorry, I knew I got it wrong as I said it. Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, even on the outside. Gary Payton, whenever he got in, he had +6. He was +16, I think, in points whenever he got on the court, and I he's a lot more crucial than I think people are ever going to give him credit for. I just overall think coaching and just figuring it out was the biggest thing here. They just figured it out. They just adjusted when they needed to adjust. They figured out what was working, what wasn't working throughout the series. And I don't think Boston really did. They tried to adjust on defense on Curry, and whatever they threw at him just wouldn't work. And I don't know, man. I just think the better team won here. I also think that too. I think the better team won here, the better coaching staff, the bit more depth. I just think the better team won too.
I agree with you with almost everything you said. I think the Peyton piece of this, he's kind of a lesser part of the team. But I think they really, again, I think I said it on the last show. I don't think they thought that they could win 3 rounds of or 4 rounds of series without him because He's a lot like his dad on the perimeter when it comes to the defense. And he chipped in with a couple, early points to kind of help them go on that run. For Game 6, Boston actually, I think, started off, it was, I think, 12-2 or 14-2 to start off, and I was like, okay, we're getting a Game 7. And then Golden State just went on a tear.
They
Draymond was
did.
hitting threes, Klay was hitting shots, Steph was hitting shots. It was a divine display of basketball. You know what the series kind of reminded me of? It
What?
was, and I don't think you would have remembered this. I remember a bit of it, a decent amount of it. It was Heat Spurs 2014. So this was the year after the Ray Allen shot. The Spurs
Mhm.
came back and they blitzed the Heat. It was over in 5, and it was the largest margin of victory in NBA Finals history. Um,
Dang.
I think the Spurs kind of figured out the Heat in those last 3 games, and I think Golden State kind of figured out the Boston offense in the last 3 games. You saw with, I think the defense for Golden State, obviously Steph Curry, will get into him. He's amazing. But the defense from him, too, because he was playing some damn good defense in these finals. Klay played really well defensively in the final 3 or 4
Mhm.
games. Wiggins had Tatum in solitary confinement the last couple games. Draymond's defensive intensity was huge. Kevon Looney, who I think is going to go underrated in this championship,
Mhm.
got a ton of offensive rebounds. Remember earlier in the series, Game 1, specifically, when Boston, it seemed like they got every offensive board, every
Mhm.
rebound.
Yep.
They, in the final couple of games, really mitigated that advantage to the point where it actually looked like Golden State was getting a majority of the rebounds. Um, I thought Kerr's defensive adjustments were excellent in this series. I thought he outcoached Udoka in the last couple of games. And overall, Game 6, nobody really outside of Steph and Draymond stepped up particularly offensively. We didn't get a Game 6 Klay performance at all. He was just 5 of 20 from the field. But we got timely contributions. Klay made some early. Wiggins made some throughout the game. Otto Porter hit a couple threes. And Golden State got on that huge run. It was, I think, 72-50 at one point in the third quarter. And remember, Boston kind of came back a little bit. They got it down to within, I think, 8. And
Mhm.
then every time it seemed Boston would hit a shot in the final quarter and a half or so,
We
Golden
answered right
State would
back.
respond. And so
Mhm.
Golden State just leveled them out throughout the rest of the game, and that's what a champion does. And I think we also saw some of the experience of Golden State and the confidence of Golden State in these final 3 games, and especially Game 6. They looked more prepared. They looked more confident and sure of themselves, and I think that comes with having been champions thrice before.
Thrice. Here, listen. I'm gonna be back a second. I got my computer working. So
All right, nice. But yeah, I think with how impressive Golden State was in the last 3 games, it did remind me a lot of the Heat Spurs series. So moving on now, Warriors win Game 6. They take their 4th title into 8 years. Let's get to the next topic, Lenny, and this one I think will
The
be
next topic.
on one for both of us. Steph's legacy.
Ooh. Yes,
So
Steph.
Stephen Curry wins his 4th NBA championship in his career. He wins his first. Yes, media. He did it. He won his first Finals MVP.
Wait, no,
And
let me do that.
I think now before this season started, Steph Curry was firmly one of the 17 greatest players in NBA history.
That wasn't a debate. Yeah, I agree.
He was the lowest you could have him without looking like an idiot was 17. I think I already had him above a couple of these guys, but he's firmly put himself above Julius, Moses Malone, Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, and
Mhm.
Kevin Durant. He's above all those guys
Yes.
firmly.
Kevin Durant is probably the most the biggest narrative changer in this series.
But I
Probably.
think the Durant debate's done now. I don't even think you can have.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like you probably could have argued a lot with Oscar Robertson and all those other players based on different criteria. But Kevin Durant was always like oh, you couldn't win without Curry. I couldn't win without Steph. I can't win without KD. Now it's like
That was the
this
biggest
series
argument.
specifically added to that argument. Like, hey, Steph literally took over the series by himself, basically, and he did it without KD, while KD lost to that same team in a 4-game series on his supposed super team. It totally shifted that
And he
argument.
didn't play well in the series either.
No, he didn't play. That was probably one of his worst playoff series, like, of all time, if we're being honest.
And I think these are going to be the two controversial ones. I think he's moved past Hakeem Olajuwon. I think he's moved past Shaquille O'Neal.
Ooh, I agree with the Shaq one.
That's my bold take. I have Steph Curry right now, 10th all time. I think God bless as well. I don't think they had the same impact on basketball nearly the way Steph did.
No.
You got to think Steph changed the game of basketball, and I'll take the sunglasses off because celebration's kind of over now. But Steph changed the way the game of basketball is played. Steph Curry, you don't see guys taking logo threes until around 2013, 2014 when Steph started doing it. Steph Curry has more MVPs than either of them do. He has as many championships as Shaq does, but he has more, I think, in like the prime of his career. Because the final one with Shaq with D Wade, he wasn't the same guy. He was good, wasn't as good as he used to be. Steph has 4 in his prime. Hakeem won 2, but there's always going to be the question of he won those 2 when Jordan was gone / coming back from baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that should put an. I think all championships matter, but you do nitpick a little bit with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Steph Curry, in terms of his peak, like 2016, Steph Curry is still one of the greatest. I know he didn't win the title that year, but I still think that's one of the greatest seasons ever. And honestly, I'm going to say something a lot of people are going to be uncomfortable with. You can now have a serious debate. The greatest guards of all time, it goes Jordan, Magic. You can have a serious debate as to whether Steph Curry is greater than Kobe Bryant all time. You seriously?
You could debate it. I totally think you can debate it. Obviously, my opinion, Magic Johnson, but it's close. I don't
even the Magic piece of it now. If you were to say Steph's the greatest point guard, it doesn't look as bad as it would have looked a couple years ago.
Oh no! If you said it like 2 years ago, you would have been clowned for it. You would have just been like, "Oh, you didn't never even watch basketball. You just know the name brand." Like, nah, there's an argument to be made for that. I don't agree with it, but I still do think there's an argument. If you structure it a certain way, you can argue it, and that's something we didn't say before the series.
So, would you say this is by far the most important championship for Steph's legacy? Because I think it is. This was, and I think having done a couple of psychology classes, it's kind of made me figure out people look at the emotional stuff more now than like what actually sometimes is the case because everyone's biased in some way or another. But when we looked back at Steph's finals career before this series, the one that was most talked about was 2016. Even though Steph was very good in 2015 on his way to winning that title, very good in 2017 on his way to winning that title, very good in 2018 on his way to winning that title, and very good in 2019, even though there are a couple outside circumstances that went against him, which prevented him from winning that. 2016, he was not good outside of Game 4. And that's what everyone remembers. We remember the Kevin Love switch play. We remember him missing the shot and then Kyrie making it over him. We remember him blowing the 3-1 lead. We remember the throwing it out of bounds. That pass was just stupid. He still calls it the worst game of his career. But this was a Finals MVP performance, and this will now be what Steph Curry's Finals legacy is remembered for, more than 2016. It erases that now. It makes up for it. He redeemed himself. Even though that narrative to me was always a little unfair, he's completely redeemed himself. Even the biggest Steph haters can no longer deny that he does not have an elite finals performance. And there are some finals MVP performances that are not special. Like Andre Iguodala, for example, that was not special. You look at like Tim Duncan's third one in 2005 or Kobe's second one in 2010. Those were good performances, but they weren't special performances. This was a special performance from Steph Curry. he took
Yes.
over the NBA Finals. He
Yes.
was, and Basketball Reference has a stat called game score, which I don't always agree with. But visually, I think he was graded, I think, as the best player in 5 of the 6 games of these finals.
Yes.
One was game
Yes.
5. So Steph Curry did a lot for his legacy on Thursday night. I know Game 4 will be the memorable performance, but I thought he was great in Game 6. He had 34 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, good efficiency, and I thought he played really disruptive defense, kind of disrupted the Boston offense a lot throughout the game. And it was on a night where nobody really outside of Draymond gave you their usual offensive production.
Yeah, Steph's legacy is clear cut. I think at this point, you're an idiot not to say that he has at least a pretty good argument to be top 10. I could see the argument for why you'd say Shaq or Hakeem are better, but I personally agree with that. I think Curry's better than both of them all time. If the way people attack cases like GOAT cases or whatever is they try to poke holes in a great legacy. I don't see the holes for Steph, really. I just don't see that the trophy case is as big as others. You know what I mean? We talk about MJ defensively. Obviously, he has multiple Defensive Player of the Years, 6 championships. There isn't really a hole in his career. And I don't see it. The only thing for Steph is that on this other side of the ball defensively, he just hasn't been great. And that's really all I can think about in terms of his overall game. Like, he impacted the game majorly. He has 4 finals championships. He's a finals MVP. He took over. I mean, he's a leader of a dynasty. He's the best player on a dynasty. I don't see the hole outside of maybe defensively. And he's not even like that bad defensively. He's just not like great. He's just not great. And you can't undersell how great of a player Steph Curry's been his entire career and how good he was in this thing. And the only hole in his argument that I've heard recently, and you messaged me this, is that he plays in a weak era or whatever. Like, he's not tough. Like, that's so stupid. He played against the most physical defense in the league, like, in the finals and dominated. Like, that fact alone is just, it's so stupid to me. Anyway, Steph Curry's a lock for the top 10 in my eyes. And anyone who denies that he has the right to be like people for him to think he's top 10, just, I don't want to talk to those people. They're stupid. I just don't want to hear it.
Yeah, there can if you're listening to this. But yeah, I think Steph Curry. Do you agree with my point that he was great in Game 6 though? Because I know
he had a really good game in Game 6. He was probably the best player again in that game. I thought defensively he actually had some nice plays. I mean, obviously he was raining it down from 3 as usual. He seemed to be the general of the offense like usual. I mean, yeah, it seemed like I think what happened was that Curry, this is just like we saw it so many times, it was less of a shock factor. Like, oh, cool, Steph's just dropping 30 again, Because
he did the entire series other than that one game. So
other than Game 5. Yeah.
All right, moving on now. Let's just talk generally the Golden Dynasty's rejuvenation.
Yes.
So 3 years ago, we didn't know each other yet, but 3 years ago we both saw the Raptors defeat Golden State. Take me through kind of the emotions of the last 3 years for Warriors fans, from losing that series to losing Durant to Klay getting hurt a couple times to Steph breaking his hand to being the worst team in the league. How the last 3 years have went. So just kind of take me through it.
Yeah. I mean, in 2019, after that Raptors series, we all as collectively always thought we were going to bounce back because we always bounce back, even at down 3-1. And then LeBron series, he beat us. It seemed like, we're done. But we bounced back. And it felt like in the moment we were going to bounce back. And then 2019 happened and we're like, are we going to bounce back? I mean, we just had the worst season I think most of these newer fans have ever seen. Really? It just felt like every single dynasty has their tail end. It felt like this was it. I don't think this is the time we bounce back, And then the slow climb to relevance again in 2020. I mean, even the Andrew Wiggins trade, that was a general, as a joke, wow, the Warriors really got Andrew Wiggins, man. That's I remember what's his name said, they aren't going to win a championship now because they traded for Wiggins.
Nick Wright.
Or they aren't going to go to another finals. Yeah. And to see, I remember vividly that Memphis game that we played last year in the play-in game, because I was like, we weren't expecting to go far, but we were like, let's at least make the playoffs. We're the Warriors. Let's do it. And just the reaction of fans, the reaction from the team. I mean, it was devastating, along with like just injuries with Klay and Curry. And I mean, it was just a hard time to be a Warriors fan in that aspect. But, when 2021 came around, I don't know. It felt like even just the first couple of games, something was different. It felt like we were back already. It felt like we were going to bounce back just like usual, which it's not a feeling that we had in 2019 and 2020. It always felt like it's over. Like we're just going to watch like Curry play out his Kobe days now. Like he's going to be the main show in the offense and he's just going to carry the team. He's carried the team, but Kobe at the tail end of his career obviously didn't have enough talent to make it to a finals, and we did, and it's just an even better feeling than before because we always came into the season knowing that we were the top dog, so it wasn't a surprise. Going into the season, I expected us to be a pretty good team, maybe second round exit team, but here we are winning the finals, proving like all these expectations broken, and it hasn't been like this since maybe like their first year going to the finals, when the first showing of the iconic trio. And it's just like, this is more, I don't know how to explain it. It's just different, it just feels so much different than all the other ones. Cause this one, we had to fight for this one. This one was like, we weren't like by leagues and above the better team in this one. We weren't expected to be this good in this one. There was just a lot more doubt in this team. And even internally, I'm sure there was doubt, but it's just a crazy experience, man. Crazy.
Just rode the leadership of Kerr and Steph and Draymond and the resilience of Klay to another one. Yep. I think it would feel the best for you guys because in 2015, you guys were the new kids coming up. There seemed like there was an upward trajectory because of the last 2 years had been getting a little bit better and a little bit better. In 2017, you guys were the greatest team ever, in my opinion, at least in that argument. With Durant, you were unstoppable. In 2018, yes. Not quite the same, but it was still pretty much the same feel. But this time, you guys have been knocked down. So I'll kind of go through more of a detailed timeline. So the Warriors lose the 2019 finals. Klay tears his ACL. Durant gets hurt again. Durant then leaves. And this is an underrated part of this. Durant could have just left. Durant went through a sign and trade that got them D'Angelo Russell. That was a really you guys should be thanking Kevin Durant for that. Because that D'Angelo Russell move, you traded Russell that same season for Andrew Wiggins.
True. No, that's true.
Because of Durant, you guys kind of have Wiggins now.
It's hard to say we win the series without Wiggins. I agree.
I don't think you do. I think you
Why
need
not?
I think you need.
Thanks, Kevin Durant. Okay, let me just say this real quick. I don't have any beef with Kevin Durant. I really don't know why Warriors fans are so butthurt about it. I
think it's just because he's been passively aggressively liking tweets and just making kind of snide comments towards Steph and the Warriors, and I think there was a thing saying he wanted Boston to win Game 6 or whatever. But whatever. That's not this topic of this right now. But then Steph breaks his hand in 2020, just 5 games in or so. And then they're the worst team it was so weird that season. And I know because there was COVID and everything else, but to see the Warriors go from the unstoppable dynasty for 5 years to the worst team in the league, losing every single game.
Yeah.
It was really weird. They come back, Klay gets hurt again, but they pick Wiseman. Poole comes into his own a little bit. And then they were just kind of a mediocre team last season. And Steph had that great April that kind of carried them into the play-in. Honestly, I thought last season was the second best season of Steph Curry's career outside of his second MVP year. I could not believe he got that team into the play-in. but they lose to the Lakers, they lose to the Grizzlies, and they're missing the playoffs again, back-to-back years. And they come into this year as kind of an older core mixed in with a younger core. But I knew when they started 17-3 through their first 20, and then when they started 41-13 through their first 54, that this would be a legit team and they would be a legit finals contender. And so they make the playoffs, they make quick work of Denver, make somewhat easy work of Memphis, make very easy work of Dallas, and then they win these finals. And it felt like this was a team that we thought it was over. I kind of thought it was over. I thought their days of winning championships were done. And I did not think the Nick Wright take at the time, and I'm a huge Steph Curry fan, I didn't think saying Steph would never play in another NBA Finals in 2020, that wasn't a terrible take in my opinion. But it looks dumb now because of what's happened. But I think give credit to Bob Myers for reconstructing this team. Again, give credit to Kevin Durant, kind of.
Yeah, thanks, KD. Appreciate it, KD.
And give credit to the Warriors leaders and the Warriors young guys for meshing together.
Yeah. I mean, you spelled it out, details. I spelled it out emotionally. There's not a lot to say, man. It's just other than we freaking won. Give me another one.
Now, Klay Thompson wasn't himself in Game 6. He was only 5 of 20, and he shot 2 of 8 from 3. There was a point in the game where he was taking shots, and I was like, why are they – give the ball to Steph. Why is Klay shooting? He hasn't hit anything all night.
Agree.
But, man, this guy – his resilience, is that not one of the biggest stories of this? I thought
it has to be
the last couple of years to come back, and I know he's not as good as he used to be. I get it. He was a huge part of this team. You can argue he was their second most important player still in these playoffs. Mm-hmm. So what do you make of that? I know you love Klay.
I love Klay.
What do you make of his resilience?
Man, like a couple of weeks ago, or like whatever, I think it was Game 3 or Game 4, I was talking about how Klay wasn't himself, and I was all broken up about it. He picked it up in the end. Just real quick, I'll talk about that. I mean, everybody in the world was clowning this dude after he went through like 900 days of rehab or whatever you want, like 900 days without playing the NBA. Then he finally gets back. All momentum's going towards him as he has a pretty good playoff up until then. And then he gets to the finals, Game 3. Everybody's clowning on this dude, every single person. And for him to show up by the end, at least be a productive player in this offense, man. I mean, after everything, he had every right just to lay down and give up at that point. I mean, and then after all that, just still show up and have a pretty good end of the series. I mean, love this guy. And I remember in the press conference what he said. He's like, freaking bum. But anyway, yeah, when he is towards Achilles first, I don't remember, was it towards Achilles? It was like, man, he'll be back, but like that sucks. Like that's gonna be a big deal. Like, cause he's getting older at this point. Even back then, it was still a little bit old, and you'd figure he'd be back by the next season though. And the season goes by, and you're like, all right, it was a little longer than expected, but we'll get back. And then you're so excited to see him again on the court. And then, bam, another injury. And you're like, what is going on, dude? Like, he just went through an entire year and a half of rehab just to just get it taken away from him right before the season starts. I felt so bad for the guy. And I know he felt terrible about it too, especially watching as his team was the worst team in the NBA that year. That has to feel terrible. He thought he was going to go right back into it and contribute to his team. And then, another year and a half of rehab, and he gets back, and he plays pretty good. And he missed 900 days as he watched his team just not be the same. You know what I mean? Like 900 days he had to watch from his couch as his team just wasn't put in it as usual. Like he had to think that it was partly maybe even his fault. Like that's probably something that was going through his brain. And for him to come back and be a really huge part of this series and just overall this season, I mean, like, that takes a special kind of person and mindset to do that, man. 900 days, dude. I mean, it's insane. I mean, I love the guy, man. I don't know how you can not like him.
So he suffered a torn ACL in his left knee in the 2019 finals.
That's right. It was the ACL and then the Achilles.
And then it was the Achilles. The ACL and Achilles, two of the worst injuries you can get in sports, especially
that too. It
the
was
Achilles
awful
injury.
injuries.
Especially the Achilles. Like after the ACL, I thought he would take a year and he'd come back. The Achilles was career threatening in my opinion.
It was.
But you guys could not have won this series without his flurry in the fourth quarter of Game 4 to help out with Steph. You guys could not won without him being maybe your most consistent scorer in Game 5. And you guys could not have won without his defense in these last couple.
Yes. I didn't talk about that.
I mean, everyone's been saying Klay Thompson, he's not the same defender he used to be before he got hurt. And it's like the last couple of games, he's looked at it. He's been able to play the passing lanes. He's picking the Boston guys' spots really well. Jaylen Brown was getting super frustrated with him. I mean, it felt like he would just take the ball from him, seriously. Making timely steals. His defense overall in these finals, I thought, especially at the end of the series, games 4, 5, 6, was really special. Mm-hmm. And this is a guy now that's a bona fide Hall of Famer. And he's gonna be remembered very fondly as the second or third best player of a dynasty. So he, in my opinion, I've always kind of thought it was Steph is the greatest shooter, and then Klay might well be second. I know Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, Larry Bird are all gonna have their cases for that, but you can make it as strong of an argument for Klay, and it's been. I like the guy too. I don't know how you can dislike the guy. I know he made a couple funny comments towards the end of the.
Maybe if you're a Memphis fan, you don't like him.
But that's it.
About it. That's about it.
I'm so proud. I'm inspired by his story.
It's kind of like the Alex Smith story, except for Alex Smith, he only played in like one game or whatever it was. I don't remember. He played a couple games, but. He contributed. If Alex Smith were to contribute to a championship level team, and that rehab took like 3 years to do, like it's just insane. Like if you really look into context out his story, but yeah, love Klay. We love Klay.
All right, Lenny. This guy has been a huge meme throughout the NBA Finals because of the podcast. And look, I'll kick us off with it right now. Draymond Green. I watched Game 1. I remember I watched it in a bar. I didn't watch it in the bar, actually. I watched it in the hotel room. I watched Game 2 in the bar.
Right.
So Draymond Green in Game 1 was awful. He missed every shot, I think.
Yes.
It was one of the worst performances genuinely, one of the worst performances I've seen from a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he was,
Game 2, he was pretty good, but like a lot of it was overshadowed because of the whole ref stuff. I don't know if you remember that or not earlier.
No, I do. I was so surprised. Like I was telling everybody, I'm like, how? There's no way. How is he still in this game? I'm like, how is it? Like he did everything like to get kicked out of that game, and he played the whole way.
I didn't watch Game 3 because I was on the flight. Remember, but
he didn't play good. He didn't play good at all.
From the box score, it was as bad as Game 1.
No, he didn't even play good on defense. He didn't play good.
Game 4 wasn't terrible. But he still wasn't good. He made some plays, though. I'll give him that. Mm-hmm. Game 5 was actually pretty good, especially the earlier on. And Game 6 was outstanding, I thought.
Yeah, no, Game 6. He averaged a triple-double, I think. Wait, did he get 10 points? I don't remember. But
he went for 12 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists.
Oh, that was the
2 steals and 2 blocks.
Yeah, he was excellent.
And he's not a box score guy either. He's a motivator. He's a leader. He's a defender. He's a rebounder. He's a playmaker.
I mean, like, again, this is similar to Klay. I mean, everybody was getting on this guy. I mean, even his own mom was getting on him on Twitter, man. And for him to show up on the biggest game, because Game 6, let's just say hypothetically we don't win that. Things look scary. That Boston had would have momentum going into that game. For Game 6, for Draymond to show up Game 6 the way he did, I mean, crucial, absolutely crucial to us winning this whole thing. And I feel like the same way about Klay. I mean, like everything was stacked up against him in this series. Like everyone like hating on him, and he just
Because of
found
the
a way.
podcast thing, and he makes himself hateable. I gotta
He
say it.
does.
Draymond
He
makes
does.
himself a target because of what he does throughout the games and because of some of the comments he makes after or in between games. But he came out. CJ McCollum said, "There's no KD walking through that door. The Celtics are going to win the championship." And Draymond's like, "Celtics are going to be ringless by the end of this, just like you." And they ended up being ringless, just like him.
Yep.
And you got to give Draymond credit. You can't just say, "Oh, Draymond got carried," because Draymond, he played really well in Game 6 and even Game 5.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, he's a role player. But he played like a pretty damn good one by Game 6. That's what I'm going to say. He did his job and he did it excellently. And for him, like I said, everything up against him, love it. I'm probably
in terms of, so we have plus minus data going back all the way to 1997. So in terms of total plus points, so how much better your team is on when you're on the court in terms of getting worse. So in terms of overall volume statistics in the playoffs, only LeBron James and Tim Duncan have had more total plus points than Draymond Green since 1997 in the playoffs. That's crazy.
Wow, that is crazy. I didn't know that. Dang, man, that's pretty wild. Actually, that's really
he's
huge,
a Hall of Famer
for the last 25 years, man. That's pretty crazy.
He's a Hall of Famer.
No, he is a Hall of Famer. I don't want to hear it anymore. He's a Hall of Famer. I don't even want to talk about it. Like,
I don't even think it's really a discussion at this point.
It's not really that much of a discussion. It's kind of just like, are you stupid or are you smart or are you just normal?
So this is the 4th title now for Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Andre Iguodala, even though he didn't really play outside of Game 1.
Yeah, he was a coach. He was glorified.
But I know Warriors fans love Iggy all the same.
Oh yeah, we love him.
So I've got some facts for you. As you know, I'm the fact guy here.
You are the facts guy.
In terms of greatest trio ever, this is a pretty interesting stat. The Golden State Warriors have never lost a playoff series in which Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green started every.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
It still stands to this day.
That's crazy.
Because in 2014, when they lost to the Clippers, Draymond didn't start every game. In 2016, when they lost to the Cavs, Draymond got suspended. And in 2019, when they lost to the Raptors, Klay got hurt. So he missed one of the games. So they have actually, their losses, there's still no full formula for how to beat all 3 of these guys when they're playing for an entire 7-game series. There's no team that's done it.
The best chance you got is you either injure one of them or suspend one of them or foul them out. That's like that's the formula. I figured it out. That's it.
And in terms of all-time success for the greatest trios, so the greatest trios in NBA history: Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, 1981 to 1992, 3 championships and 5 finals appearances. Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and James Worthy, 1983 to 1989. 3 championships, 6 finals appearances. Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Bill Laimbeer, 1986 to 1994. 2 championships and 3 finals appearances. Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, 1996 obviously to 1998. 3 championships, 3 finals appearances. Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, 2003 to 2016. 4 championships and 5 finals appearances. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, 2011 to 2014. 2 championships, and 4 finals appearances. And Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, since 2014, 4 championships, 6 finals appearances. So they've got as many championships and finals appearances as every other all-time great duo or trio.
I mean,
I think they're the greatest trio ever.
It's hard to debate,
in terms of success, they've been the most successful, and they fill their roles. Sorry to interrupt you there, they fill their roles perfectly. Steph Curry is the leader. He's the primary scorer. He's the primary facilitator. Klay Thompson's kind of that 3-and-D, low ego guy that is always there in the big moments, it seems like. And then Draymond Green's kind of the enforcer, the intimidator, the awesome defender, the one that takes less touches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they fill their roles perfectly.
I mean, we always talk about in sports, like individually, how much they win. And argument is like it's a team sport. You're not gonna win without a good supporting cast. So when you talk about trios, right, you are entirely like that's okay. That's just 3 players out of 5 starters. All right, that how good you play and how much you win, that is entirely up to that trio for the most part. Like you have to say, like they play the most minutes, whatever. Like they're for the most part they are the most in charge of how much they win, and they've done it more than anyone else. And in terms of a trio, I that's the way I'd argue it. I don't think it's pretty straightforward to me. I don't think there's really a lot to argue. Like you said, they fill each other's roles perfectly. Steve Kerr, as great of a coach he is, man, it must be easy to coach or easier to coach with these guys just on the court. I mean, they just make it easy. They fill each other's roles perfectly. You need 3 great players in the NBA or 3 really good players to win a championship. You just need that. You just can't win with one, unless you're LeBron. He's like the only exception. You need 3, like a good 3 players, a role player, not a role.
Even
player,
LeBron, real quickly, by the way, he's won his championships. Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh for 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love for 1 of them. And then the other one, he had Anthony Davis, who was one of the 5 best guys in the league, too. So,
anyway, my point is they won the most. And in a team sport where there are 3 of the 5 starters, that in a trio, like I think winning should be the biggest thing you look at. I think it should be because they're most in charge of how much you win and lose. And it's hard to debate whether or not they aren't the best trio just based on that alone. You don't even have to look at a lot after that. I mean, 4 finals, 6 appearances, like man, that's just hard to
in
not
just
look
8
away
years.
at. In 8 years. That's another thing. They've done it like all in their prime, right? Like linearly, they've done it like right here. And I don't know. It's incredible.
All right, I think the Wiggins piece of this is a huge one.
Oh, yeah. I love Wiggins. Get Wiggy with it.
Is it fair to say he's one of now the trades that have kind of swung a title? I think that's how important he's been. So you look at the trades that have swung the title, the Kawhi trade, the Pau Gasol trade, when the Memphis gave him to the Lakers for nothing, that kind of kickstarted a new phase of Kobe's career. The second,
you could count the Kobe trade too, technically.
Yeah,
like initially,
I guess.
Just saying.
The Rasheed Wallace trade in 2004. Those are just a couple examples. The Bill Walton trade.
Yeah.
But Wiggins, I think, and I know it's only been 1 year, but like I genuinely thought he was y'all's second best player in these finals. He might have been the second best player in the series.
Maybe. Like, I would maybe give that to Jaylen Brown. Maybe
I still think the greatest perimeter defenders ever would be Scottie Pippen and Kawhi Leonard. But I think the Wiggins perimeter defense stuff in this finals was like just a level below that. It got to the point in Game 6 where Tatum couldn't score on him. He couldn't score on him.
It was bad. It was bad, man. I mean, we were talking about last time how he just could not finish over the rim. I mean, that was a huge part of it. Is just how big Wiggins is and how great he played in the paint defensively. He shot okay from 3, but Wiggins still did a great job on the perimeter, like you were just saying, in that aspect. He brought it defensively, offensively, and as a team player too. I mean, like he did everything you could have asked for him, man. I don't like Wiggins came from like pretty well-known bust to like average player considering first overall pick. And like you're saying with that trade, that I don't think we win this series without Wiggins. Let's just think about the starting lineup without Wiggins, all right? Wiggins ain't playing. That means Jason Tatum's probably going to have a better series. That means defensively that's a whole step down. Right? Jordan Poole probably
and then your
starts.
Defense takes a hit.
Exactly. And a lot of these games we've pulled through because we were able to make sure that Boston didn't go on runs. They go on runs and we answer right back. What happens if we don't have Wiggins? Well, then you got Jason Tatum better opportunities. You're going to give Jaylen Brown. Everyone's going to have better opportunities, period. no matter how good Gary Payton played perimeter, he can't do it alone. I mean, there's a point that Wiggins that I don't think we win the series. I really don't think so. I'm taking a long time to get to this point, but a long road. But I just don't see a reality outside of just like Steph literally going absolutely bananas, wild.
He did really, in
Which he already did.
It
But
took 6 games to beat him with him. So,
best case scenario, win in Game 7 by like 2 points or something like that. Like
I genuinely don't think you could have won it without him.
I don't think so either. I
That
mean, if Jason Tatum,
he's no Durant, but
I think if Jason Tatum came into the series and played pretty good, which I don't think he played bad, but he didn't play good, really. He played like average, I guess. But anyway, if he comes in the series and plays good, added on with how good the rest of the supporting cast did, I think we're like done almost and I think if Wiggins doesn't play, Jason Tatum probably has a pretty solid series. I think he has a pretty good series. Like as much as you want to clown on Jason Tatum, dudes had a tough matchup. He had a tough matchup, man. And yeah, I don't think we win this without Wiggins. Long point to get to it. I don't think so either.
And he only shot 7 of 18. He had 18 points on 18 shots in Game 6, but it felt like it was bigger than that, if that makes sense.
It felt like every time he made those shots, they were big momentum swingers.
He hit 4 threes. And overall, he whether it was a putback or an offensive rebound or a defensive stop, it felt like he was always causing havoc for Boston. And I think it's kind of like the Stafford piece of it now, where it's pretty well known now. It was the organization. It was not him.
Yes.
And I think what both Stafford and Wiggins have kind of taught us over the last couple months is circumstances and situations matter even more than we think they do.
I agree. Coaching is a huge part of it. Supporting cast in terms of team fit matters a lot. Leadership, just pure talent is obviously a major factor. All of those things he really just didn't have. He just didn't have those things, man. And now he's playing the perfect role for how he plays really on the Warriors, man. I couldn't really think of a better way to play Andrew Wiggins. And
he's playing kind of the Barnes role, but he's way better than Barnes was.
Yes, he is playing the Barnes role. And I mean, everything felt like right into place for Wiggins this year. I don't know. It's going to be hard to see who we give contracts to this offseason. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about that or not, but he probably will stay.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that the last 2 years have been Steph's best ever defensive years with Wiggins.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense too.
Speaking of coaching and developing, I think after this last championship, the 5 greatest coaches in NBA history, I'll go chronologically here.
Go for it.
Red Auerbach, Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich, and Steve Kerr.
Mm-hmm.
I think what Steve Kerr did defensively, the defensive schemes, Boston just couldn't, there were stretches Boston's offense couldn't score. Yep. And I think the Warriors won this championship because of Steph's offense and because of their defense, genuinely. And I think Kerr deserves a ton of credit for kind of motivating that defense. And obviously, he's seen it with, he was with Chicago and San Antonio as a player, and they won titles. Chicago was a great offensive team, but they were also an outstanding defensive team.
Yep.
The Spurs were a defensive dynasty. And he was part of the Suns teams that didn't win titles because their offense was great, but they had no defense. And now with Golden State, he's coordinated some great regular season and playoff defenses, not just this one. This is his 4th title. He's won. I think there was a stat where if you combine,
he's won 33% over the last 25 years. I think.
Yeah, it was something
titles.
like that. He's won a crazy amount of the last couple titles, going back to 96.
Mm-hmm.
So. And this is his 4th title. And has he lost a playoff series in the Western Conference? I don't think so, because they lost to the Spurs and Clippers with Mark Jackson. So
I don't think so. I really don't think so.
2015.
He's only lost to Eastern Conference teams.
He lost.
I don't think so.
And Toronto.
I never even thought about that. That's pretty crazy, actually.
I know. But yeah, I
Wow,
think this
yeah.
guy, I think he's one of the 5 greatest coaches ever. Maybe, the resume's there. I'll say that.
Yes, the resume is there. I think if we're just going to talk about this series specifically, adjusting, man, adjustments. Like nothing's going to stay the same. And early in the series, it felt like the Warriors were a little clanky. We didn't 100% figure out the formula. And I was just talking about this right at the beginning of this, and they figured it out. It felt like they were playing exactly the way they needed to play to win the game. And I cannot give Kerr enough credit for how he handled the situation. He could have totally just effed up the minutes. He could have benched Draymond. He could have started, right? You know what I mean? Like there was so much pressure. There was so much pressure to do things that he shouldn't have done, and he didn't. He stuck to his gut, and he did what he does best, and that's adjusting. And he's done that his entire career. He's a great leader of men. He's just a great guy. I love him off the field. I remember, or off the court. I remember. Yeah, I think it was today. He was doing an interview. He's like, man, I'm being honest, I'm hungover right now. And I'm like, that's a great players coach right there. That. And just defensively too. I mean, like you said, he does great things as fire defense, man. Even when Draymond wasn't showing up 100%, we still had some pretty good defensive performances from overall the whole team. And I cannot speak enough to Steve Kerr as a coach. He hits all the boxes, in my opinion. Championships, leadership, defensive coaching, offensive coaching. And there's a reason that not a lot of Warriors assistants outside of the Warriors do good when they go outside, because it's a lot of it's Steve Kerr. And
there's a reason the guy, what was his name, Atkinson,
Kenny Atkinson. Yeah, he's like, I'm staying. Sorry, yeah, I'm not leaving.
Sorry, Charlotte. Sorry, MJ.
Sorry, Charlotte.
But yeah, I mean, Wiggins deserves a ton of credit, but Kerr deserves a lot of credit too for how much better he's made Wiggins. Especially defensively. And yeah, I mean, it takes a very good coach to be a dynasty. I'll say that.
It does. It doesn't take no slack, coach.
That's why, Belichick, Popovich, Saban, those guys, Chuck Noll, Bill Walsh, all those guys, Red Auerbach, all the great dynasties in sports have had almost always great coaches.
I think one thing, just real quick point. Underrated from coaches, head coaches. They are head coaches. They need to dictate facility and organization stability. Steve Kerr has built one of the most well-recognized, best organizations in sports, quite frankly.
You guys are basically the Spurs now.
The Warriors as an organization are fantastic. We take players that weren't good on other teams, like Wiggins we were just talking about, and get the best out of them. We inspire championship level aspect. I mean, like, organization-wise, this is the best organization in NBA, arguably, and
it is the best organization.
And in sports, honestly, it's like,
yeah,
it takes a great player and a great coach to be good offensively with, what am I saying, scheme-wise, right? But it takes another level of coach to build an organization from the ground up the way Steve Kerr did.
And I love how, and last thing with Steve Kerr, I love how selfless he is and humble he is. Like, I remember a couple days ago after the game 4, he was like, I'm so lucky I've had Steph. And he talked for like a few seconds and he's like, get Bob Myers over here. Credit to Bob Myers. He's been a great GM, but like, it seems like he doesn't want the credit, and he was like that as a player too. So
yep.
All right, Lenny, let's move on to the final Warriors topic. Anytime you win a title, and my Georgia Bulldogs are going to go through this too, and as a Warriors fan, you well know, you always try and chase the replication.
Yeah.
Do you think the Warriors are built to repeat?
I think they're better built for it than most teams. I think the way I've looked at this a couple times, I even did like a series about it, but why teams either fail or win after they win a finals, a championship, is because they change, but they stay the same at the same time. It's hard to explain.
Look at the Bucks.
It takes a specific set of circumstances for you to get somewhere, right? And the environment changes year to year. So if I'm like, let's just say the Bucks in 2020, right? They won that series, or they won that because they got hot at the right time. They had a good enough talent, and they matched up great against Kansas City when their
O-line Tampa Bay Bucks, no way, not the Milwaukee.
Yeah, Tampa
Bucks.
Bay, not Milwaukee.
But either could apply in this situation.
Exactly. But anyway, the reason they didn't do good or they didn't go to the Super Bowl the next year is largely because they stayed the same, number one, and they had injuries, which isn't their fault, obviously. But they stayed a team. Their team, they got a bunch of their old players, but they figured out, like the NBA or the NFL. Sorry, I'm like mixing up right now. The NFL figured them out, basically, in terms of how to beat them. Not like if you do the same thing twice, you're more likely to lose a lot more than the first time, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't explain it very well, but I think my end point is true, that if you do the same thing, you are bound to lose again. But the Warriors are set up in a very interesting circumstance here, because they're going to have younger players stepping up for new roles, and they're going to have older players maybe even taking a little bit of a step back. And they're going to have different lineups, and they're going to have different minutes spreads based on how good Kuminga develops, how good Wiseman develops, how we handle free agency this year with a couple contracts. It's not going to be the same team as last year. And we know the championship DNA is there. We know how to win a championship. We've done it 4 times now. We've been to 6. And we know the coach is there, like we just talked about. So we're set up in a very interesting circumstance here. Again, with the Bucks last year, they had a specific circumstance to get to where they were, and even how good Giannis is, it took one injury for them to go out, and it took them repeating the same thing. I think ultimately, unless you are just like MJ and the Bulls, or
even they made some
powerhouse,
they made minor changes.
Exactly. Dennis Rodman. Again, we don't have to get into it. It just takes the small tweaks. You need to tweak the formula, and the Warriors are in a position where they can totally do that. I mean, the Suns, we can talk about the Suns last year. They repeated with the exact same formula, and they got wrecked by Dallas. I mean, that's just what happens when you repeat with the same thing. You need to tweak the formula. You don't have to change it, but you got to tweak it a little bit. And the Warriors are set up to do that.
There's a great phrase called, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I would rebrand it to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but maybe tweak it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the Warriors is definitely going to tweak it, because he got some free agents. I've heard Otto Porter may leave. Kuminga's going to play a bigger role. Moody's going to play a bigger role. Wiseman's going to come back. Maybe we'll see Steph kind of take a little bit of a step back in the offense. We know he'll be ready come playoff time, though.
Oh, yeah. No.
Steph Curry is now. Yeah.
He'll play.
Klay Thompson hopefully gets closer to what he was pre-injury. I think he will be. Either that or he's just kind of on the downside of his career. But even this Klay is more than good enough to win a title. Jordan Poole will be better. Draymond doesn't seem like he's really – I mean, the defense he played too in these finals looked pretty intense and pretty dominant at times. Would I say they're guaranteed this isn't the Durant.
No, they are not guaranteed.
Unbeatable. Like the Durant team didn't need to change anything. But
no,
this team, they're already just – by nature, because of the young core they have, they're going to change some things, and more guys are going to get more minutes. Some of these guys are going to get fewer minutes, and they may have a departure or two. So we'll see. Would I say they're going to repeat today? It'd be hard to bet against them.
It's hard to bet against them.
But the West is going to be good next year. The Nuggets are coming back stronger. The Clippers are going to be really good.
The Mavs just added some talent too.
What Phoenix does, obviously, still got Luka with the Mavs. Memphis is only getting better. So there's still a lot of threats there. And then in the East, we'll get to the East in a minute. But the Golden State, they've got as good a shot at it as anyone, as always.
I totally agree. I'm not going to bet on them, but I'm not going to bet against them. That's where my stance is.
And it's still the draft is in a couple of days. We'll see. We're still the season just ended, guys.
The season just ended. So
right now, it's hard to say they're not the favorite. I would say, at least if I were an odds maker, I'd make them the favorite.
Yeah, I would. For now, I would totally be like, well, who else is going to step up? I guess Giannis has a case for number one. I think other than that, I'm not sure, honestly. I agree.
All right, Lenny, the loser of these big championship series or games always gets less run than the winner. And I think the fan base would prefer it that way for the losing team, because they don't want to talk about how they just –
they just want to
get
back to their lives.
We got to get to the Celtics.
Yeah, we'll talk about
what
the Celtics.
What was that in Game 6? The Celtics lost 103-90 to to Golden State, and it started good. Again, I said
Yeah,
this.
they started hot.
It
They
was,
started
I
on
think,
fire.
14-2 to start, and it was like, okay, we're getting a game 7. Let's go. And it didn't happen. Golden State went on a 21-0. What was the run again?
It was 21-0.
21-0.
After Draymond dropped that crucial three.
And look, Boston made a third quarter run, and then Golden State, every time Boston would hit a shot again, Golden State would respond.
Mhm.
And we got to get to the offense for Boston. What the hell happened the last couple of games? I knew entering this series the Boston offense was a problem. I kind of thought, and I'll go back, with 3 minutes left in the Miami game, in the game 7 against Miami, I kind of thought Boston's going to win the title. Boston's going to do it. And then the final sequences of that Miami Heat game 7, and I saw them completely forget how to play basketball and almost blow. And it would have been the worst loss in NBA history, genuinely, because they had it. It was like a 13-point game with 2.5 minutes left, and it came down to a Jimmy Butler missed 3 at the end of the game to decide who was going to the final.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, these games are going to be close. This team against Golden State in close games, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And we saw games 4 was very close. Game 5 was close. And game 6, every time Boston came close, Golden State would answer. And then Boston kind of capitulated for a few minutes.
Capitulated? That's a big word.
I mean, they did, though. Like, Jaylen Brown played well, and Al Horford deserves a ring.
He deserves it, man. Yeah.
But what do you think happened at the end of the series?
I think beginning of the series they played well offensively. For the first 3 games, I was impressed. Jaylen Brown was hitting crucial threes. White was pretty good. Williams was great when the limited minutes he played. I think it was a mix of when they played above their heads, obviously that started to go down. They started playing to how good they were, period, offensively. They weren't getting as many opportunities by the end of the series. We were talking about this earlier with rebounds. Warriors did a great job rebounding offensively and defensively by the end of the series. Jason Tatum just not being that guy specifically, I don't think he played bad. I think he's getting a little too much crap for how he played.
He's not
I think
Steph.
he played, but he wasn't like dominant, he wasn't like that guy, and that's fine. But when your whole team is built around you being that guy, when you just don't show up in that way, well, you start to have a problem. And I think it was partly the Warriors adjusted, Boston didn't. Offensively, it looked like they were doing a lot of the same stuff they were doing early in the series. And Warriors, like we were just saying with Steve Kerr, I mean, it takes a special kind of coach to figure out what works and what doesn't. Steve Kerr figured out what worked on defense. Celtics couldn't figure it out past game 4. And to lose 3 in a row the way they did, scoring, I don't even know how much they averaged, but I think they only scored 100 in one game, one of those games. A big part of it was adjusting from the Warriors, or lack of adjustment, I should say, playing to their level instead of like they dipped down. They were playing above their head early in the series. They started to dip down in terms of how good they were actually, and missed opportunities at the rim. I just think they weren't getting as many opportunities. They had to make more shots efficiently, and they just couldn't do it. They weren't getting volume anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you about the coaching point. I think Udoka's been very good for Boston. I think Kerr kind of figured him out. And it kind of got to a point defensively. And look, the Boston defense I thought was very good in this series, but it got to a point where they were playing the drop coverage scheme, and it took me surprised by game 1. I remember it was like, why are they treating Steph like he's Russell Westbrook out here? Did they not realize he's the best shooter ever? But they kept doing that until from game 1 to game 4, and Steph was cooking them. So in game 5, they switched it up. They sent extra help. They kind of prevented some of the screen stuff he was getting to get some more space. And it worked in game 5. didn't really work in Game 6. I think Steph kind of
No.
figured it out. But the other guys got involved in Game 5 too. But the offense is where I'm concerned here, because Boston in the half court was a disaster in the final 3 games. And the other thing is, I don't think they take smart shots necessarily. I see them oftentimes just rush shots, and like Marcus Smart will take a stupid pull-up 3 from deep, and sometimes he'll make it, which is even weirder. But I don't think they necessarily, and I think they really lacked a point guard in these finals. Like, they
No, I
lacked
agree.
a ball handler,
I should have brought that up. You're right.
The Warriors had Steph and even Draymond to kind of take care of that for them. The Boston didn't have that. Smart is a great defender, even though he kind of got torched in this series, but he is not a natural point guard passer.
Yes.
So I think if I were Boston, I'd look at that. Derek White kind of faded towards the end of the series.
He lost a lot of confidence towards the end of the series, man. He
Yeah.
just didn't look confident in his shots anymore.
Grant Williams is annoying. He didn't really do much though. We'll get to Tatum in a minute. But I thought it was a fairly good series for Jaylen Brown, outside of the fact that he just makes some stupid turnovers.
Yeah.
Rob Williams was awesome in Game 6. I swear, this man went up for every single block. It was crazy. He's their best defender. I know Smart won Defensive Player of the Year. That's only because Rob Williams got hurt.
Yeah,
Rob
no,
Williams defensive player.
I 100% agree. There's no argument. I agree.
And then Horford, we just talked about. So, look, this Boston team's still very talented. We'll get into kind of where they are moving forward, but I just don't think they made smart basketball plays when they needed to make them. And I think some of their half-court limitations really affected them in this series, as we both kind of thought it would entering the series. I think what happened is in Game 1, the Warriors, because they were playing Iggy, they could not space the floor, and so their offense let Boston get back into the game. And then Horford was generating easy open threes, and he was making all of them. And so that's what – and Game 1 feels like a year ago. But that's what caused Boston to get back in that game and ultimately take it. But after that, Golden State looked like the better team. I don't remember what happened in Game 3, but from what I saw, Games 2, 4, 5, and 6, I thought Golden State looked better.
Game 3 did not look better. They looked like the better team. But anyway, yeah. I think part of it too – oh, wait. No, I just had it. No, never mind. I had something to say. I literally just forgot.
It's fine, Lenny. It happens to everyone.
Just whatever. It's fine. I had a point, but I forgot. Whatever.
So ultimately, you just think Golden State was the better team, and it showed in the last 3 games?
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
I agree with that.
They were better adjusting. They were just the more talented offense. I remember. Yeah. Okay. I remember what I was going to say. Anyway. I just felt sloppy from Boston, man.
Yeah,
they just looked
sloppy
offensively. Offensively, it just felt like they didn't know what they were doing at points. It just kind of looked like an NBA 2K game, man. Like, where just some random dude was just deciding when to screen and when not. And it just looked sloppy. And Marcus Smart either needs to, number one, figure out how to just be a leader in that way like Steph is, or number two, they got to find out a replacement for Smart or possibly someone else on the court.
I didn't love the body language either. I thought in Game 5 and 6, they kind of came out like they didn't really want to be there. And I hate how Marcus Smart flops and then whines to the refs every play.
It's a losing culture kind of thing.
I don't think they're losing culture. I just think Smart is.
It just adds to like let not take ownership. Let's blame the refs. You know.
All right, we got to talk about Jason Tatum.
Yeah, we have.
What the hell was that?
Most turnovers ever.
Jason Tatum, 13 points, 3 rebounds, 7 assists. Although I'll say this, I'll get to that in a minute. 3 steals, a block, 5 turnovers, 6 of 18 from the field.
Ooh.
And not a single free throw attempted.
I mean, no, he attempted but made.
No, not a single free throw attempted in Game 6.
Wait, no, did he have free throw? No, he did.
He didn't.
Really?
I'm on
I
basketball.
thought he did. All
I'm
right,
on
never
Basketball
mind.
Reference right now,
I
bro.
thought he missed like 4 in a row.
That
I
was
thought he
game
missed.
5.
Oh no, you're right. Yeah, never mind.
His free throw shooting was he shot like 65% for the series.
Yeah, no, he was
But
terrible.
and he's at 86% for the regular season.
He
So,
shot the whole 20.
I think the Warriors defense deserves a ton of credit.
Yeah.
They doubled him.
Sure.
They threw different looks at him. He kind of lost some confidence. He couldn't finish at the rim. Wiggins was all over him. Draymond was all over him.
Yeah.
But he did not really play well much in this series. If we're going to be honest, it was not a very good series for Jason Tatum. Now, it's been a good playoff run, and I think the turnover stat's getting a little bit blown out of proportion because the guy he broke the record of was this guy named LeBron James in 2018, who's pretty dominant. So when you're handling the ball and you're going deep into the playoffs, you're going to turn the ball over a lot.
Yeah,
Jordan
that's
turned
true.
the ball over. Kobe turned the ball over. LeBron turned the ball over. It happens.
It happens, yeah.
But Jason Tatum, he didn't have a great series. Game 1, he shot 3 of 17 from the field, only scored 12 points. Now, he had 13 assists, but it's not like it was some Chris Paul 2009 point guard masterclass performance. I'm sure you would know this too. He was passing to open Al Horford shots, and Derek White hit a couple tough shots he probably doesn't hit on most days.
To his credit, though, it does take a good player just to recognize when players are open. Like, give him some credit on that. But yeah, I agree. They were wide open most of the time, and yeah.
Game 2, he was all right. He wasn't amazing. He was decent. Game 3, statistically, that was actually his best game, but I don't really remember. Do you have anything?
Game 3, it was just like they were winning by so much. It felt a little unnecessary. He was a big part of it, though. I will give him credit in Game 3. He played really nice, but part of it was like the Warriors kind of just gave up at one point. Honestly, it kind of just looked like they gave up.
Game 4, 6 turnovers, 35% from the field, 2 missed free throws. Game 5, another 4 turnovers, 27. I think he hit 5 threes. That overinflates actually how well he played.
Yeah.
And then Game 6 was his worst performance. So
yes,
he didn't really play he didn't have a Game 6 Milwaukee Jason Tatum game. It wasn't. And I think we kind of saw a young player have to grow up and struggle to do that throughout the playoffs. Because you really think about it, every round he got a little worse and a little worse. He was great against Brooklyn. He was pretty good against Milwaukee. He was all right against Miami, and he was against Golden State.
Yeah, I don't think he was bad. I think that specifically just annoys me that people think he was just bad straight up, because he wasn't.
If he was bad, it was partly also because of Golden State.
Exactly. I think you do have to add context to how much attention defensively they were putting on Jason Tatum. They were treating him like their number one option, and as they should. They were really putting their best defenders on him, like Wiggins. They were putting Wiggins on him. They were putting Gary Payton whenever Wiggins wasn't on him, and they put all their attention on Jason Tatum. They were like, "Hey, we're gonna make sure Jason Tatum doesn't make all these crazy shots. Everyone else figure it out." And again, to Jason Tatum's credit, he did a solid job setting up other players to score. He did a pretty solid job assisting throughout this whole series, and he was a pretty solid ball handler in that regard. But for him to play to the level that he did, considering the stakes, the circumstances, it's just frankly unacceptable. I frankly think you can't, when the team is relying on you the way they do Jason Tatum, you need to be better. You just need to be better. And like you said, frankly, he wasn't grown up, or like in the way you're saying. Like, he didn't feel like a player that's
this will help him in the long run.
It felt like it was his first finals because it was. It felt like it was his first real playoff series because it was. It felt like we went into this before talking about how they went through 2 7-game series, right? It felt like he was tired. It felt like he was even a little unmotivated, and it just was
I don't know what that would be.
I don't. It's just. I
Do you think some of the criticism's going a little too far?
I think a little bit.
I think it's probably because of the Kobe thing.
I think it's because of the Kobe thing. We talk about how we don't like that. I think it's a mix of confidence just slowly draining. Like he's supposed to be the main guy. His confidence started to slowly go down the drain this series and frankly the entire playoffs. And part of it was just the defensive attention they put on him, and part of it was just there wasn't another guy to like pick him up either. He was supposed to be that guy. He was supposed to be the torch,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
think if he would have been on Golden State, I really think having a Steph and Draymond would have helped him. I don't
I
think
agree.
Al Horford is a quiet, reserved leader who leads by example, but he's not
Mm-hmm.
really that guy. Marcus
Yeah.
Smart's an idiot. So like they don't Boston really doesn't have that leader the way Steph and Draymond are.
Yeah.
I just think it was the finishing at the rim that was really bad. And I think when a player that shoots 86% from the free throw line shoots 66% in a series, it shows that their confidence is a little down.
Yeah.
And it shows they're being a little hesitant. And where I think Tatum actually improved in the playoffs was his passing. Even
Yeah.
earlier in this season, one of the things that was hurting Boston earlier in the season was Jason Tatum he was taking all the shots. And he really matured, I think, as a passer. Now, I think he needs to improve his overall ability as a passer, but he improved in terms of his nature. But at times, he also looked a little bit too scared, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, he had a good 3-point shooting series, but it was not a good overall series from him. I've seen comparisons. Like, I'll be fair here, LeBron was not good in the 2007 finals. That was his first finals. Even though he was overmatched, that Spurs team was better than this Warriors team, but he still could have done more. And even in his second finals against Dallas, he was probably even worse. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the great ones have bad series. I also think the expectations were a little bit too high. Like watching these finals, 5 of the 6 games, there was one superstar on the floor. Jason Tatum he's an all-star. He's a star, but like he's
Yeah,
not.
people even say that he's not even a star anymore, man.
No,
Like
he's a
what?
star. He's still their best
No,
player.
yeah, exactly.
But like he's not in the Steph, Giannis, KD. He's not at that level. He's
He's just
just
not
not
upper
yet.
echelon. Yeah.
Maybe he can get
But he's
there
still
one
very
day,
good.
but he's not there yet.
Yeah. You spelled it out pretty good.
All right, let's put some positive spin on it for Boston because this was still a very good season for them. And I'm sure Boston fans have probably recovered a little bit by now. So let's talk about, do you think this is an all-time turnaround? Because this team at one point was out of the playoff picture by like January. And they went on an all-time run to get all the way from like out of the playoffs to the second seed in the East. They swept Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in a series people thought would be really competitive, if not a win for the Nets.
Mm-hmm.
They knocked off the defending champions. They knocked off the number 1 seed. And they took a dynasty fairly far. So
To 6
would you say
games.
this was one of the better turnarounds you've ever seen in sports? I would say so.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the Bengals run that we just saw in ways. I don't think it was the same kind of run, but it was similar. I mean, they were totally down and just like they were like a joke a little bit too. Like, man, Boston's really gonna miss the playoffs by halfway through the year. Like everyone's had at least pretty good expectations for Boston, and for them to just show up the way they did early in the year was surprising. And they put it all together. Quite frankly, they just put it all together. They figured out defensively what they needed to do. I think a part of this is because they got a new coach. It takes a bit for the chemistry and everything to figure out exactly how the kinks and everything goes into that. And I think they just figured it out. They just figured it out. And yeah, it's really amazing if you just take a second to step back and really look at all they did this year. It's incredible what they've done, especially considering the lack of veteran leadership in this young core too. I mean, like these are all young guys. They haven't done this, man. They just turned it on. A new young coach, a new young core. Al Horford's your only real guy who's been there, done that. And man, they really did have a great year. It's just they met a buzzsaw and they got cut. That's all. They met a buzzsaw.
Yeah, so
You can't really dog on that
Tatum's
much.
23, Brown's 25, Smart's 27, Rob Williams is 24. That's their core. And Grant Williams is 23. That's their core.
Yeah.
Horford's the only old guy. And I'll kind of move into where we see Boston moving forward into next year and beyond as the final Boston topic. But I think in ways, as you can see the banner at the bottom of the screen, is it doom or gloom moving forward? I think there's a strong case to be made for both. So if you're making the, I'll make, I guess, the doom case. You can make the gloom case. So the doom case would
I'll be positive.
It took 7 games to beat a Milwaukee Bucks team that was missing their second best player. And that's ultimately really the reason they're in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And that teams kind of adjusted. Once the teams kind of adjust to Udoka's defensive system and scheme, you can, I think, adjust to it. As we saw Golden State do a little bit better in the last couple games. Once teams kind of figure it out, because Udoka had an interesting quote saying, that's what it'll be like for Tatum for the rest of his career now that he's gotten to this level defensively, the looks he'll face and the players he'll face. Maybe we see that happen more often. And the East is only getting better. Again, Milwaukee's not going anywhere. They still have Giannis. He's still the best player in the conference. Miami's got a move to make, I think. There's no way they can return that same roster and think they can win the East.
No, I agree.
Philly, looks like they're going to keep Harden. Maybe they'll do something else. Brooklyn, we'll see what happens to them, but you can never really rule out Kevin Durant.
No.
So there's still competition in the East, and this was honestly probably their best shot to win a title because this Golden State team, I think, will be better next year. So if they make it back to the finals, they'll either be facing a better version of this team, or they'll face a team that beat the better version of this team.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the doom scenario. I think. Give me the gloom case.
Gloom case is, man, we had a rookie coach this year. We have a young team, and we just had an incredible run. We were incredible in terms of just the odds stacked against us. There was no reason for us to be here, and we did it anyway. And you can't think just because you lost in the finals against a dynasty that it's just gloom from here. You beat Kevin Durant and held him to his worst playoff performance in his career. You beat Milwaukee in the returning champs. You beat the Miami, the first seed. We're just talking about this. And you took the Warriors to 6 games and showed that you almost, and by game 3, that you could have won the series. It looked like you were going to win the series, even though in hindsight, they probably were never going to win this series.
A couple plays go their way, they're champions. So
anyway, you got some adjusting to do. That's fine. Every championship level team has some adjusting to do at some point. You have a rookie coach. You're going to figure it out, man. They just got to figure out some tweaks and adjustments to this. And I know this East is talented. I know that they're good. But if you've shown that you can stay with the top dogs. You've seen it. We've all seen it. We all just saw it happen. We saw it happen for even the beginning of that streak. You can hang with the top dogs. All you need to do is just figure out some stuff and tweak some things. I'm not saying you're going to be right back initially next year, but there's no reason to think with this young core that you're not going to just get better. Chemistry is going to get better. Coaching is going to get better. Everything's going to get it just seemingly it's an upward trajectory from here. Does that mean that you're going to be in the finals next year? No, maybe not. But it does mean that overall as a franchise, you got plenty of space to go. You got plenty of space to go. Grant Williams is going to come back. He's going to play more minutes. I don't see in terms of just like
everyone's under
gloom.
Contract.
I mean, yeah, everyone's under contract. You don't really have any big free agents leaving. Like we were just talking about what it takes to repeat. You just got to tweak some things, figure out some stuff, it shouldn't be not expected for a rookie coach to have some things to figure out. I mean, I think it's pretty common knowledge if you just take a step back that most rookie coaches or just young coaches aren't going to be initially like have everything ready to go initially. I think that's stupid to think in a year that you're going to have the best formula for your players. No, it's going to take some time to figure out. So am I picking the Boston to be as good as they were this year? Probably not. They're probably not going to make the finals this year. That's a big thing to ask of this team, especially after such a devastating blow in terms of just like, man, we were right there. We could have made it. But to say straight up that they don't have a bright future, I don't think that's right. I think they got a core. They have the core. They can do it. They just need to figure out some small things, and they maybe even add free agent, figure out the point guard situation, figure out their turnover situation, and I think they're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I think there's cases to be made on both sides, for sure. All right, Lenny, let's get into a topic that I've really been wondering for a while. When I say a while, I mean really since the Mavericks series ended. I listen to the Bill Simmons podcast fairly often. He brought up an interesting point after the Warriors Dallas series, which was there's a couple ways to win in the NBA, and I think there's the LeBron way is one, and then there's the Steph way is another. So the LeBron way, and I think this is because LeBron for the first 7 years of his career was just stuck in the worst possible situation. And by like the 06, 07, 08, 09, 10 seasons, where he was just carrying Cleveland year after year, no avail, it really burnt him inside that, like, I got to win right away. I got to have as much talent around me right now all the time. And once something starts going downhill, I got to go. So we saw wins a couple titles in Miami. D Wade starts to look old and injury prone. He bolts. He goes to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Kyrie leaves. Kevin Love starts to decline. He bolts. The Lakers. Look at the position he's in now. He's kind of trapped. I'm going to make a prediction right now. I don't think LeBron James wins another championship in his career.
He might not even get to another championship at this point.
Yeah. I mean, we just talked about how the West is going to be good. I didn't mention the Lakers, and there's a reason I didn't mention the Lakers. So there's kind of two scenarios in LeBron's career that he could have been like Steph is with this Golden State. Because if LeBron were on Golden State instead of Steph, there's no way they keep this young team get together. LeBron,
no.
For another star. He's like, go get me Bradley Beal or someone like that.
Just like Brandon Ingram, gone. Yeah.
So I look at the 2014 Cavs. This was when LeBron returned back to Cleveland. He left Miami after they got blitzed by the Spurs. I think most people thought he'd leave after that. I don't know if everyone thought he'd leave for Cleveland, but so they had Kyrie, who was just 21 years old, still very young. They had Seth Curry, Anderson Varejao, who was a solid center. Tristan Thompson, same thing. Dion Waiters, Luol Deng, irrational confidence guys. Jarrett Jack, who was with Golden State, a pretty good player, and still was a decent player at this time. And Anthony Bennett, who was a bust, but we didn't completely know it yet because it was just his first year. So they had a lot of assets, and they had picks. They had a lot of assets. And so LeBron chooses to come back to Cleveland. LeBron and Kyrie on its own in that East at that point was the best team.
Yes.
But they made the Wiggins for Love trade. Mm-hmm. Should they have? Do you think they should have done that? Like, and I know they won a title. I get it. But I think there's a scenario where they let the Wiggins thing play out, and instead of LeBron just having that one magical title, maybe they win the 2015 one. Maybe they win more. Maybe he's still in Cleveland. And maybe they have this longer, more sustainable thing going.
It's hard to say. There's so many factors that go into this. One trade, it's a butterfly effect. This affects this and affects this and affects this. Bottom line, Wiggins is good. We know Wiggins is good when he's put in a situation where he's left to succeed. Early in his rookie year, I'm sure he would have been a productive player on the Cavs. Based on what I know about Wiggins, I'm sure he would have been good. But to straight up just say that they could have won more championships, it's just a hard thing. It's just hard.
It's hard to say.
Considering how good the Warriors were, it's just hard to say. Am I going to say that they had a pretty good chance? A better chance? They could have had a better chance to win that with Wiggins. They really could have. I'm just not sure. It's just a big question mark that I'm just not sure. It's just a lot of factors to take into account. But yeah.
And then the other one that'll probably be more controversial was 2019 with the Lakers.
Brandon
Ingram and Lonzo Ball as like that young core. They traded him for Anthony Davis. Now they won a title. So I don't know if this is necessarily as good of a thing here, but would you like at this point? The Pelicans are in a way better position than the Lakers are, I
Oh
think.
yeah, for sure.
And so was that a mistake? I'm wondering too. Like, do you think Steph Curry would have made all the Anthony Davis stuff happen that season?
Curry
I,
doesn't even like involved in GM stuff. He just kind of
I
lets it happen, man.
it's two different ways. What I'm trying to get at is it's kind of two different ways to win. And these have been the two best players the last decade. But it's striking to me how different LeBron and Steph are, and how I think one is in a significantly better position to win championships than the other. And I like LeBron's better than Steph, all time, all that stuff. But it's just interesting to me how they've kind of got into the situations that they're in. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally understand your perspective. Like, if you build for the future, you are investing in a long-term investment other than a short-term investment. In a short-term investment, you're more likely to win now and maybe not win as much, but you're more likely to win now. With the long-term investment like the Warriors have done here, you have a chance not only to win eventually one, just like you would have the short term, but you also have in terms to win longer, to have a long stretch, like a dynasty, like we've seen with the Warriors. And I think ultimately it comes down to, are you really were you willing to take the risk of waiting long game? Or are you like, I just want to win, period, and then like whatever it takes to get there?
I think if I were to answer that, it'd probably be because of LeBron wasting his first 7 years essentially with no talent. He just wants to win and win and win, and especially because it was LeBron who had to catch MJ and be in the GOAT debate. And he has 4 rings to his credit. But Steph, I think he just loves Golden State. And I don't think LeBron's ever had the same loyalty to a franchise the way Steph does.
I think he was kind of close with Cleveland, but I think those early years soured him on it.
Yeah. All right, Lenny, we got to talk about Kevin Durant's legacy.
Oh, boy.
Is he – what's the temperature with him with Warriors fans right now living in the Bay?
Kevin Durant? Who's that guy? Who's that guy? No, I'm like legit serious. People just don't even like.
Wait, are you serious?
You're serious? I'm legit serious. People just don't care about him.
He's just the guy in between Barnes and Wiggins for small forwards.
Yeah, no, he's legit just some guy that happened to be here at one point. Like he was it's all about Steph, Klay, and Draymond. Those are the guys people talk about when you bring up the Warriors in their dynasty in the Bay Area.
Do you think there could have been a worse scenario for him in these playoffs? He gets swept, underperforms, and then the Warriors win a title?
In terms of just like
the worst
legacy damaging,
yeah.
If we're just talking about overall perspective,
I don't think you can move down in terms of your all-time ranking at a certain point.
No.
But in terms of not moving up, like, was this the worst possible thing?
The only way you could possibly move down is if what you did gets put into a different perspective and it gets seen as worse. That is the only way.
And it has now. It's the point.
And yeah, the perspective is like, oh, the Warriors were a lot more to do with those championships than we thought. Okay. Curry's a lot better than we thought. Okay. KD might not be as good as we thought. Okay. Those are 3 big revelations that we really like started to explore.
Extremely basic thinking without any
exactly.
Nuance,
Exactly. But it's getting people to think, though. That's the thing. People didn't think about this back in the day. If you said anything about KD not being the biggest reason for the Warriors winning, there'd be like an occasional Curry fan being like, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. But it was mostly like, don't talk trash about Kevin Durant because he's that guy. Like talk trash about him.
Warriors fans just think he's the guy that replaced Barnes and got replaced by Wiggins.
It's not even that, bro. People are just like, yeah, Kevin Durant played.
People don't even remember him. Cool. He won like 2
I'm like being dead serious. People just don't care about Kevin Durant. They just don't care. They really just don't. I'm like being dead serious, bro.
Was this even before the championship?
This was before the championship, but now it's like even bigger, honestly.
And honestly, him doing that sign and trade helped you guys.
I don't like hate Kevin Durant or anything. I like Kevin Durant. I'm so happy that what he did for our team, but it's kind of hard not to just be like, yeah,
I think because the title before and after means more, probably.
Yeah. But still, though, I mean, he brought 2 championships to this freaking
Do you think he should
franchise.
have left? Real talk, if you were him, would you have left? Because looking back, he's kind of trapped now a little bit too. Not as much as LeBron, but
I think he had an option to make. Like I was talking about with the risk factor, like, do I go out there, prove it for my legacy, prove it that I'm that guy, whatever, or do I stay with the team, like the easy spot? I think he chose, with all the backlash, I'm going to take a risk, and frankly, that risk did not pan out whatsoever.
hasn't yet. Maybe it'll change.
Yeah, so far it's been a disaster.
Doesn't look like it.
I think so far it's been like an utter disaster from expectations. People thought this Nets team was going to be like
they were the favorites entering the year.
Yeah, people thought this team was going to be ridiculous. I mean, now they got Ben Simmons, Blake Griffin. I mean, they even got more talent, and it's just been such a weird team. Anyway, he took a risk. It didn't pan out, and he probably assumed that. I don't think the risk was the problem. The risk, I agree with. I think you should have. If you were talking about if I want to have a better legacy or whatever, take the risk. I'm totally for that. You need to like go prove it to yourself, prove it to everyone else. Do that. I think the way he went about it was probably like the most questionable thing.
That's why Warriors fans don't like it.
He added like a super team,
and he did like aggressiveness of it.
Yeah, I think the way he went about it was the problem. I don't think the risk was necessarily that bad.
So, I think the smart basketball decision would have just been to stay with Steph Curry.
Yeah, I agree.
But because picking Steph Curry or picking Kyrie Irving over Steph Curry is like leaving the 10 out of 10 girl, 6 out of 10 girl with personality issues. There's your analogy for the day.
The analogy.
But I understand why he did it. And I think you know this to be true. No matter what he did, and he won the finals MVPs, and you know he deserved it because he was great, especially in those.
He was great. He was great.
But he will never be loved like Draymond. He will never be loved like Klay. And he will especially never be loved like Steph.
No.
Because he's an outsider, and he was an outsider. And he went to Brooklyn, and he's trying to win a title by himself, and it's not really working. Like, if you were to say a year ago, Durant or Curry to 100 NBA fans, I think 55 would pick Durant.
Yeah,
all time.
I agree. It was close. Oh,
if you were to
still, yeah.
If you were to tell them now, I think about 5 would pick him. That's how much I think it's changed in the last.
At least in this moment, it could change.
I think even Durant is now like done with it. So yeah. I think it's Kevin Durant's one of the best players I've ever seen. I ever will see, but the basketball move was he should have stayed. But I understand why he left. But I do think this doesn't necessarily help his legacy the way the last 2 months have gone.
No, this is, if we're just talking about straight up his perspective on everything, perception, that's what I'm going to say. It just been most damaging part of his entire career, perception-wise. This is the worst thing that happened to his legacy-wise since he went to Golden State. Quite frankly, this is the perception way.
And now people are they're wondering if he was even the best player on that team.
Which
during that time, if you were to say Steph was better than Durant, would have been considered a bit of a hot take. I don't know if that's necessarily the case anymore.
I don't think it's the case anymore. I think it's whatever you think. Yeah.
All right, Lenny, what were your overall thoughts on the NBA season?
I thought it was fun. I thought this was a fun year. A lot of surprises, like we're talking about Boston coming up early. They were seen like we didn't think that, like the Pelican series, man. They gave a good shot to the Suns. I really liked the Memphis. John Morant, his upcoming season.
The Memphis Timberwolves series was awesome.
Yeah, that was fun, man. That was a great series. Timberwolves showed a little bit what they could be in the future. I really like what happened with the East, Philly, and the trade, man. The trade with Harden and Ben Simmons. That was a huge deal. That was a big thing. It was fun. I just thought this year was fun, man. And the clowning the Lakers was fun.
The Lakers and Nets, who were like, everybody was like, oh, just Lakers Nets finals easily. And then
Man,
before the
the
year,
Pelicans made the playoffs, and the Lakers did not. Brandon Ingram.
so just in these playoffs, we had Durant and Kyrie get swept, and the entire NBA world's light into them. We have Jokic losing 5 after winning back-to-back MVPs, and people are saying he's the worst MVP ever. We had a really just hilarious Grizzlies-Timberwolves series with all sorts of mistakes. Just the best.
Yes.
We had, remember when the Sixers, it looks like they may actually blow a 3-0 lead to the Raptors?
Yes, dude, that was funny. That was very funny.
We had the Warriors-Grizzlies series that with even without Ja, the Grizzlies were putting a very good account of themselves in that series. It was competitive. That might have actually, Boston, I guess, but that was your toughest series in the West.
That was our toughest series in the West, period. I don't think it was really close, honestly.
We
Every
have
other team kind of sleepwalked.
another Harden and Doc playoff disaster against Miami.
Yes.
We had the Celtics dethroning the Bucks with some awesome games too.
Yeah,
Game 3,
those are fun.
Game 5, Game 6, Game 4. We had Giannis playing some of the best basketball I've ever seen a player play. And then we had Jason Tatum have his best career game ever. That was a great series.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Suns win 64 games, go being the favorite, the juggernaut of the league, to getting blown out in Game 7 by the Dallas Mavericks. We have Luka Doncic.
Oh, yeah, Luka. We got to talk about Luka, too. His rise.
He became a legend.
Yeah.
We had
also the Chicago, DeMar DeRozan, man.
Yeah, DeRozan was a fun story.
It's fun. Yeah, it's a fun team, man.
They beat Milwaukee once, even. So.
Yeah.
We had a really awesome, like the Game 6 and 7 of the Heat Celtics series was intense. That was playoff basketball, man.
Yes,
that was awesome. Jimmy Butler probably might have even been more impressive than his bubble run. Like those final 2 games were outstanding. And then we have the Warriors and Celtics in a series where nobody outside of tech billionaires and white guys from Boston were happy about happening. Have a really fun, competitive series. And it was Steph's best series ever. And it was finally Steph wins the finals MVP. And there were some awesome games. Game 1.
We forgot. Oh, sorry. No, keep going.
Game 1 was a great game, I thought. Game 2 wasn't a great game. Game 4 was a great, iconic game. Game 5 was a pretty good game. And Game 6 was a memorable game.
Mm-hmm.
Just this season, you had Giannis play his best basketball ever. You had Jokic play his best basketball ever. Embiid. Remember the Giannis, Jokic, Embiid race? That was some.
Yes, that was fun.
All 3 of them had legit arguments too.
Yeah, you could have made an argument for either one. Personally, I'm a Giannis guy. I would have went Giannis, but I'm not. I don't hate Jokic at all.
Jokic winning it.
No,
and I wouldn't have a problem with Embiid winning it either.
No.
Luka, what a playoff run for him. What a playoff run for Jimmy Butler. What a season, renaissance for DeMar DeRozan. You had LeBron.
We forgot to talk about, though?
What?
The Utah Jazz, bro.
Oh, yeah, the Jazz lost another series. I think they're just kind of
blow it up.
It would have been funny. It was funnier last year with them because they were the best team in the league. And
it was just more of the same, bro. It was just like we knew it was going to happen, and it happened. It was just funny.
And then, of course, you had
man.
A great run from Steph and him winning another title. So I think the right team won at the end, and it was a great year, I think, for the NBA in general.
Yeah, I thought it was fun, man. I really, there's not a lot of like hard spots to look at it where I'm like, oh, that was kind of lame or bad. I think the only real disappointing team where I was just like, man, that sucks. Besides, because at least the Lakers, I know they were disappointment, like a huge disappointment. Okay, the Hawks too, but at least the Lakers were like funny to like they added entertainment.
The Lakers were so bad they became funny.
Exactly. But the Clippers were like really the only team I was like, man.
But it was because Kawhi was hurt.
Well,
I can't wait to see Kawhi come back.
It's just like, man, I wish like this year they would have been better in terms of like I just wish I could.
Yeah, maybe they could have made the playoffs.
The Hawks, and them are the only two I'm like I didn't really have entertainment value added on to them, like not meeting expectation. You know what I mean?
But like, I think with Kawhi coming back, the Clippers become an instant title contender again.
Oh, the Knicks are like a meme still, though, too. That's funny.
Yeah, but There wasn't a ton of
Charlotte.
Knicks, just memes. But
Charlotte thinking that they're anything going into play-ins.
all right,
That
Lenny,
was funny.
it's been fun covering the NBA playoffs. We're probably going to move back now into just NFL content for the rest of the summer.
Probably.
And then we'll go from there into the season. But it's been fun covering the NBA playoffs with you. I think we've had a great
It's been refreshing. We got
months.
just move into a different league, talk about some other stuff other than NFL.
So, yeah, please like this video, subscribe for more, and God bless.